Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our June executive meeting. Before we start, I just wanted to extend the congratulations of the executive to Somerset Council's Elms short break provision that have got an outstanding in their Ofsted. I'm sure we all congratulate the team that is involved in that. It's great to hear that we got outstanding provision for children with disabilities, and to get an outstanding from Ofsted is no small feat, something I've never achieved. So congratulations to them. So welcome to everybody to this meeting of the executive. I'll just go through the preamble. There's only executive lead members present in the room that are taking the decisions at the meeting. Others in attendance are here to provide advice. There are no planned fire drills today. In the event of a fire alarm, please in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. If anybody present might need assistance in exiting the building, then please let one of the Democratic Services team know. The agenda and papers have been published on the council website in advance of the meeting. The council recognises the importance of striking a balance between providing opportunities for the lawful expression of views. Any unacceptable behaviours or actions that cause disruption can lead to our meetings being adjourned. The council will be making a recording of the meeting, and this will be published in due course. So today's meeting is run using a hybrid format. The executive lead members and key officers are physically present here in the Lecture Room in County Hall in Taunton. Other elected members and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific items or to observe. This meeting is being broadcast, and therefore other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely. Can we please use the meeting chat function only for purposes of the meeting, primarily to indicate that you wish to speak, so the hands up function is preferred. Please say your name before speaking, and please can I stress the importance of turning off microphones and cameras when not speaking, which I'm pleased to say everybody who I can see online has done so. Which brings us to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Sarah Wakefield, who's on annual leave, and Graham Oakes, I believe, is online due to work commitments. Graham, are you there? Or he's planning to be? Okay, we'll look forward to welcoming Graham shortly, particularly as he's got a paper in front of us. Councillor Mike Rigby's also on annual leave. We've not had his apologies, not seeing him in the room, so we will note that, and he may join us later. I know he unexpectedly joined a meeting earlier in the week, but I understand he is flying high somewhere. Okay, any other apologies? No, okay. Minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Lashon, Liz, good morning. You suggested you had spotted something.
I think I may have spotted something. On page 10, it refers to the budget having been set in January. I think it was March. So if we could just correct that, please.
Okay, there's a nod from Democratic Services. So with that drafting amendments incorporated into the minutes, can I see a proposer, please? Councillor Shearer, can I see a seconder, please? Councillor Lashon. Those in favour of adopting those minutes, those against, and I will sign them after the meeting. Are there any declarations of interest in our agenda today? Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts.
I just need to make people aware that I sit on the local governing body of Blackbrook School, which forms part of the Oak Partnership. I don't believe that has a personal or prejudicial interest. It's just so that people in the room are aware.
Thank you for reminding us of that, and just important for transparency that we have these highlighted. And any other declarations of interest? Not seeing anybody. No. So we've got public question time. First on the list was Ian from the Oak Partnership Trust. Is Ian online? Ian, I wonder whether we could take your public speaking time under agenda item 9 when it's on our agenda, so that the discussions flow more easily. Would that be acceptable, Ian?
I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and apologies if you're going to have to sit through other agenda items before we get to you.
That's fine.
I'm sure you could find exciting stuff to do wherever you're based today.
Thank you. If
Thank you.
I'm going to sit back in another meeting and listen in. So it might take me a few seconds to come out of that meeting to do my bit when you need me.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much, Ian. Okay, and so secondly, we've got Councillor. Sorry, I've just demoted you, Mike. Secondly, I've got Mike Davis, who wants to speak on the planning service. Mike, good morning. Saw him here earlier. Has he dropped off? Sure. Can you just keep an eye on that, please, Mike, and come back to it? Because I did see him on the call, I'm sure, before the start of the meeting. Yeah, okay. So if he does pop back on the call before we get to the end of members' questions, we'll take it then, or at an appropriate juncture within, if we can find one. If not, we will make sure that there's a full written response given. Okay, so new item on the agenda, which we've now included, is questions from councillors to the executive, which gives the opportunity for members to raise issues that are within the executive's purview during our meetings. And the first question is from Councillor Diogo Rodriguez. Good morning, Diogo.
Thanks, Chair. So my two questions are to Councillor Wilkins. Do you want me just to ask them both one after another and then respond to both? Yeah.
Yeah, please do.
And also just, I appreciate it's the first time it's come to this meeting, but normally when we have this at full council, the questions are published online before the meeting. Just notice they've not been done so, but appreciate it's the first time it's come to exec. So just
Okay.
on that.
I'll nod towards the Democratic Services team, and I'm sure they will do that in the future.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question to Councillor Wilkins. Last week I was in Yeovil with the Somerset Bus Partnership. I heard from residents like Mavis and Jenny, who told me that since the withdrawal of Yeovil's number 11 bus, they now can't get to the GP, the supermarket, the cemetery, or even their weekly Golden Oldies Club. Their words, not mine. Jenny did say to me that it stopped her social life and she cannot meet her friends anymore. Whitemead has gone from having a regular bus service to nothing at all. And for elderly, disabled and mobility restricted residents, it's been devastating. A representative from Somerset Bus Partnership said to me, the phrase used by the council in relation to this action was neither informative or correct. The Service 11 was deregistered, no longer exists, and is not a currently registered service in Yeovil. The lack of a local passenger input has meant that decisions made have been life-changing for local residents, but had Somerset Bus Partnership been involved from the start, then issues would have been flagged up early on. So the question is, can the lead member explain Somerset Council's role in the decision to withdraw Yeovil's number 11 bus service and what it is doing to restore a basic reliable service for those that have now been left without one? The second question for Councillor Wilkins. Footfall in Bridgewater Town Centre has dropped by over 400,000 in just 1 year. That's 400,000 fewer people walking through our town, fewer people popping into shops, grabbing a coffee or visiting local businesses. Traders were told that various Celebration Mile improvements would help bring more life into this town, but right now they feel like it's driving people away with no clear end in sight. They were told that various roadworks would be finished by June. Some have now been told September, others October. So, can the lead member confirm the date for completion of Eastover roadworks, Angel Crescent roadworks, and Clare Street roadworks? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to invite Councillor Wilkins to respond on both questions, please.
Thank you for the question, Diego. I'll just say that I've got a very comprehensive, long response. However, this is not the time and the place to give a response, but the verbal response I'm going to give is not going to really express the whole picture. However, I will say, in regards to the Service 11, which is operated by South West Coaches on behalf of the council, and Service 51, a commercial service by First South West, both served Abbey Manor Park and had significant route overlap. As part of our enhanced partnership and with improved BSIT funding, we consulted the bus service improvement for April 2025. It was identified that Service 51 was financially struggling and required support to maintain its viability, including the introduction of an evening and Sunday services. Following analysis of patronage on the Service 11, it was evident that the vast majority of passengers using the service were boarding in the common section of the route with the 51 service and travelling into town, the town centre, and further discussions with First West led to them reaching the view that if these passengers did transfer onto the 51, the service could remain viable and the evening service option could be considered once it has been established that over a period of time. To ensure value for money and support the viability of the 51, we decided to relocate resources from the Service 11. This relocation is aimed at increasing patronage on the 51 to make it commercially viable and allowing for the introduction of the requested evening services. These changes included reducing Service 11 and repurposing resources to maintain a reduced service, Service 50, and introduce a new route, the Service 53, now serving new housing developments in key locations in Yeovil. These reallocations aim to increase the overall service coverage in Yeovil and maintain the possibility of introducing evening services. Following these changes, patronage on the 51 has increased significantly, and First South West are assessing the impact, and we expect confirmation in June as to whether this route has achieved full commercial viability. If successful, an evening service will be introduced in September. These changes have led to significant improvements in Yeovil's bus services, including new routes, potential evening services, demonstrated in Somerset Council's commitment to the local bus network. I would also like to add that following the April introduction of new services, there has been an increase in support in the Yeovil area from Somerset Council of over 65% in funding, which is considerable, shows a considerable impact in the Yeovil area. But I will say, whilst we do accept repurposing of resources on the 11 had some direct and specific connections to specific places that were lost, no one has been left without a bus service, and since implementation, we've been working with South West to try and re-establish some of the direct connections that you spoke about for the town and for residents in Abbey Manor Park, Stoughton Way, Western Avenue, Thorn Lane and Larkhill Road. And I'm pleased to say that progress is being made, and we hope to provide an update on this at the next Bus Advisory Board meeting in June, with a view to the changes to be implemented on the 1st of September. In relation to Celebration Mile, the Celebration Mile infrastructure improvements were awarded on the basis of an initial costed programme. As as with any programme, it is based upon presumed inferences and known facts at a particular point in time. It provides an indication on what could be potential completion dates for the work. It does not provide definitive end date. As within construction, there are always unknowns that impact, particularly below the ground. That is partly why there is always a contingency available above the agreed contract sum. It is also the reason that the programme is subject to revision. The Celebration Mile programme is a regeneration programme, and because of its location in the middle of a commercial street, has been subject to many underground issues. The setting of the contracts or Somerset Council take on board all the risks, and therefore finding issues such as uncharted supplies, the contractor required detailed design to be presented for delivery. The creation of those designs inevitably leads to delay. The requirement also to engage with third-party services providers to deliver design changes has led to additional delays. There have been minor delays associated with the deliveries which have not been of the required quality and therefore rejected and which have been replaced. Despite the delays, the contractor has redistributed their subcontractors to deliver as efficiently as possible. At this time, there is design work taking place to avoid excavations in Salmon Parade, East Quay and on Town Bridge. The preferred solution being an above ground delivery, which will avoid additional costs by not revealing the work underground issues, and also will save on costs. The design is linked to Eastover, and for clarity, once all these works are completed, then I would consider Eastover completed. The programme is likely to move out whilst the designs take place. This work will lead to further revision of the programme. We're currently working on construction programme revision number 7. Individually based on the accepted programme at this moment, the time predicted to finish dates, and I'll say again predicted, is Eastover Road works completed on the 15th of September, Angel Crescent Road works the 26th of August, and Clare Street Road works on the 26th of August. In addition, any planting will take place in November.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And just to assure you, you'll get a full written answer to that question. The answer on the Yeovil bus service was several pages long, and when we looked at it, we thought it might be here at midnight if Richard read it all. It was one of those very detailed ones that I think took into account every bus stop on the journey. I thought at one point.
I think it was very necessary.
It would well have been necessary, but we did need to be mindful of our time. Next question from Councillor Bob Filmer.
Thank you, Leader. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Wilkins because we've had today a briefing note circulated before this meeting, which is in response to the question that I raised, but it does leave a couple of questions. I wonder if those could just be followed up, please. In the response, it says that there has been some issues with recruitment in terms of the posts that are required, and that's proved to be a challenge. I just wonder if we could know what we're doing to address that challenge, and whether there's been any expenditure incurred to date in terms of rolling out the proposals. It also, obviously, if there's going to be potential delay, I just wondered if we could have some information as to what impact that will have on this year's budget. It mentions the impact on the MTFP going forward, but it was built into this year's budget, so I just wonder what impact that is likely to have. And also would like to welcome the further engagement with local members and the local councils that are highlighted in the response, but would just like to understand a little better as to how local residents and businesses are going to be built into that consultation and when that opportunity will arise. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkins.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Yeah, you're quite right. We've we've struggled to secure the resources we would have liked to have in place by now. We're trying several different avenues to get these resources in place, and we'll hopefully be starting work on the Sunday charging proposals imminently, which will enable us, will enable the consultation to get underway by the end of the summer. This will be a public consultation, as we've pointed out several times, and will include all stakeholders, including businesses. We have also commissioned our engineering service consultant to undertake the economic impact assessment, which we will bring back with the outcomes for consultation to this committee. In regards to the on-street charge and introduction of charges in previously free car parks, these will be subject to initial discussions with the local Somerset councillors, town and parish councillors, to go through the details and identify any issues before the public consultation takes place. Again, I point out public consultation. However, at this stage, we do not currently have a time scale when we will be able to start having these conversations, as this is dependent on officer resources, but is likely to be towards the latter part of the year.
Okay, Bob, well, the response to the question you've asked, did you want to just add anything to the supplementary bits?
In relation to the MTFP, sorry, for 25-26, these proposals were very prudent, and we believe that these can be offset with the current increase in parking usage and therefore income. If this continues, as we have seen in both April and May, we will keep this under review and also provide further updates as these proposals progress.
And Councillor Sue Osborne, you've got two questions in, Sue, so shall we take the silver linings one first, please?
Okay, the question on Silver Linings internship. I was pleased to attend the Silver Linings internship open and awareness morning at the Games Master Cafe in Ilminster last Thursday in my capacity as one of the local division members for the area. This facility has been running now for some 7 years and has become a lifeline for young people with special educational needs. It is more than just a cafe. It offers a gold standard supported internship program that combines work experience, emotional support, and education to help young people achieve lasting independence. Unfortunately, the programme is now facing a funding crisis, with its director forced to accumulate around £60,000 in personal debt to maintain essential services. Recent changes to government funding for access to work has impacted the financial support allocated by the DWP to this facility. Somerset Council has so far not engaged as fully as it could to help to secure the future of this vital programme. This facility is of immense value, not just to Ilminster, but to the surrounding towns and villages, including Taunton, I might add. Losing it would be a tragedy for the young people who rely on it. We have precious little in Ilminster, so let's not lose what we have for our most vulnerable residents. On behalf of Evelyn and the team at Silver Linings Internship and Games Master Cafe, I would like to request a meeting involving the lead member for children and families, a legally qualified specialist in special educational needs, and a budget holder with authority to commit funding. The aim would be to visit Silver Linings Games Master Cafe together, meet the team, see firsthand the outstanding work being done, and explore a practical solution that ensures continued support for the young people who rely on what they offer. Can you commit to this, please?
Councillor Heather Shearer to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Osborne, for your request. I'm pleased to confirm that I, as lead member, will be happy to visit the team at Silver Linings with yourself and also Councillor Keach as the local members. The Executive Director for Children, Families and Education will also attend, as will Dr. Julie Young, who is our Senior Expert Advisor for Careers and Pathways. They'll come along with me. As you're aware, we have repeatedly explained what the options are for the organisation to be eligible for funding, and that there is no current mechanism for the council to fund the organisation, not in the way that they would like us to do. We are, of course, happy to work with Silver Linings. We have actually been working with them over the last 18 months. From time to time, we have engaged, but more than happy to continue to do that and help them to meet any requirements for funding young people with special educational needs and disabilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question and the response. And secondly, moving on to the transformation question, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And my transformation question is, at the last executive meeting, members approved the updated medium-term financial strategy 25-26 to 29-30, which stated a transformation business case is to be completed and presented to executive in June 2025. And here we are in June 2025. This commitment directly responds to statutory recommendation 2 issued by the Council's external auditors, who warn that the transformation business case and funding plan must be developed at pace in order to deliver the savings required. It is therefore concerning that the transformation business case is not being presented at this June executive meeting as expected. Given that we are already 2 months into the financial year, this delay puts at risk the timely delivery of the 101 million in savings for 26-27, which the executive has tasked the council with achieving. My questions are as follows. Why has the transformation business case not been brought forward to this executive meeting as previously committed? What impact does this delay have on the council's ability to deliver its transformation programme and meet the 101 million savings target this year? When will the executive be presented with the full business case and the details of the proposed transformation partner? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne, and Councillor Thea Butt-Phillip to respond. Good morning, Thea.
Good morning, Bill. Thank you very much for your questions, Sue, Councillor Osborne, and once again, congratulations on your appointment and welcome to your new role. In response to statutory recommendation 2, the Council committed to publishing our transformation plan by the end of June, and the plan will be published with the executive papers at the end of June for consideration by the executive on the 7th of July. Work is ongoing to develop that. There have been huge amounts going on, and colleagues and I met with the executive leadership team just this Monday for one of our regular workshops on the subject. Ongoing change and transformation projects will not be delayed by this publication. And there's a lot going on to deliver the savings already. The 101 million savings target, which you've talked about, which you rightly said, is for 2026-2027, so it's for the next financial year. And we are already delivering work to deliver those savings. We're also procuring a strategic transformation partner, as you've made reference to provide independent assurance, challenge, advice, and to identify further opportunities for transformation, as well as to build skills and capacity and support the delivery and implementation of change and transformation projects. Work is ongoing to bring those proposals forward, and a timeline for procurement is currently under development, but we will present the procurement scope to the executive once again on the 7th of July.
Okay, thanks, Theo, and thanks for the question and the
Thanks. Can I-
response. Don't normally give second bites to the cherry, but if you can keep it very short, Sue, I will allow.
This is a very short one. We're talking about a project transformation partner. So how involved would the new Section 151 officer be in selecting that partner? And in other papers, we've also made reference to having a director of transformation. I think that was possibly a recommendation made. So are we still going to need a transformation director of transformation, sorry, if we're going into if we're going down the partnership route? Could you just clarify, please, as to how those two are going to sit together? Thank you.
Thank you for keeping that brief. And Theo, you respond?
I would definitely expect the new 151 officer to have have an input into that selection. But we can get more details on that. I'm absolutely certain. In terms of the appointment of a director of transformation, that's something that we'll continue to keep under review. The idea at the moment is to bring on board the transformation partner and to consult with them about how best they think we ought to structure these things. We have, of course, got an executive director and a service director working on transformation, and we have recently appointed a very high quality, as all our staff are, new head of transformation and digital to help with the work.
Thank you, Theo. Very briefly, please, Diogo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just Councillor Phillips said that the transformation business case would be published in June, but just within the MTFS, it says word for word that the transformation business case is to be completed and presented to executive in June 2025. So I just want some clarification exactly whether that's incorrect or whether what Councillor Phillips said is incorrect.
I don't think there's a conflict in those two statements.
Okay. And have we got Mr. Davis on the call? He has emailed me to say he tried to join and was not allowed in. It looked like he did come in. Okay, I'm very happy to take him at whatever point we can get him on the call, Mike, in between agenda items, if that's okay. Right, moving on to the executive forward plan. It's published on the council website, and are there any comments, questions from executive members? Not seeing anything from other members in the room or online. Again, not seeing anything, so we'll take that as noted. And we move on to the corporate performance management report, which is pages 21 to 46. And I'd invite Councillor Liz Lyshon to introduce and then pass on to Sarah Cretney, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. We are joined by Service Director Sarah Cretney, and also I'm pleased to say by Sarah Hawkins, who will be able to give us more detail where we need it on this paper. And I'm sure, Chair, that you will be looking to my colleagues on the executive and officers for responses on particular areas of service for the council. So just as a brief introduction, you'll know that we're still working with performance indicators agreed as interim measures at vesting day. We are working on the performance management framework that is to come forward, and it will come forward to July, possibly August executive, because that needs to take into account the dates for scrutiny. That work has already gone to the Performance Risk and Budget Board held recently, which was a challenge session. So those PRB meetings, as it's known, they alternate between challenge sessions and deep dives. So the most recent one was a challenge session on performance specifically. And you will see from Appendix A today our report for Q4, the final quarter of the last financial year. And you will understand that we have concerns that we are addressing on delays to freedom of information requests, also complaints on education and healthcare assessments, on building compliance, on care assessments, on food hygiene inspections. So we can take all of those with the officers that we have here in the room and on the call today. And I am very much looking forward to the performance management framework coming forward to executive, because we have worked on, over the last 9-10 months, we have worked on a massive number of suites of papers to put this still relatively new council in the right place and in a much more robust position. And as we work through those transformation plans that have already been referenced in members' questions, how we report on corporate performance will change. And it will change as the whole council changes through transformation. And I know from my experience in previous councils and here that performance reporting is often underestimated as a tool for good management. And so what we're working on is to bring something to you in the not too distant future that will help us, because performance management is about achieving better. And so, Chair, if I may, I'd like to hand over to Sarah Cretney and then also probably to Sarah Hawkins as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Councillor Lyshon. So I am going to hand over to Sarah. Sarah is Head of Assurance, Performance and Risk, and we'll give a brief overview and then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Liz, as well. I think there's probably very little to add to what Liz has already shared with you. Liz has already flagged those areas. So in the cover report, the highlights in terms of those indicators that are showing in terms of declining performance, they are flagged. Obviously, in Appendix A, you have this full suite of indicators and the trends over time. So I think we're ready to invite questions regarding the actual performance in Q4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Got a number of questions scribbled out for me for colleagues to respond to. First of all, on paragraph 9 on page 23 about the recruitment of our foster carers. I'm pleased to see the number of foster carers we are increasing is going up, but it is not sufficient for our targets. I wonder whether we could have comment, please.
Thank you. I'll make a start on that one. I mean, certainly, yes, indeed, in the performance monitoring, it does show we are increasing our numbers of people who are coming forward and being interested, and the speed with which we are progressing them through the organisation, through the process of becoming foster carers. Of course, you have to always balance that as a net figure, because we have to also be making sure that we continue to improve the lot and the retention of our existing foster carers as well. So that would be, again, if we can track it through the coming year, however the performance framework looks in the coming year, it'd be really nice to be able to show that kind of the difference about being net figures that we have as foster carers. And I think also the business cases we have in train at the moment about reviewing the way we reward and remunerate and support our foster carers should go a long way to actually improving those figures. But it is something we keep, really kind of, there's been like a real laser focus on improving the numbers of foster carers. I was also at a recent event. Again, we continue to reach out as well to our independent foster care agencies as well, to make sure that we have increased numbers of step down from our residential places we have for children into foster care, so that they can get it, they really get that important family experience, which for so many of our children they are lacking and absolutely need. So we are looking at that all of the time. But yes, certainly our numbers coming through are better in terms of the numbers of people being interested, and we're converting quite well. But we must keep that net figure going up rather than simply stemming the tide of losing foster carers.
Thank you. It's not just it's not it's not just the right thing for the budget, it is absolutely the right thing for the children, which is the most important thing. And anything further that we can do to support the recruitment and the retention of foster carers, hugely important area of the council's work. Second point I've got noted down is on EHCPs, which is paragraph 10 of page 23 and page 10 of the appendix. I'm not sure what to make of the data on page 10 of the appendix, especially the 3% figure in the quarter four column makes me question the data, let alone the performance. Is there any context to that, please?
Yeah, may I give you because I was as baffled as you were when I saw the kind of final entries on the figures. I understand how it is. The main point to say on that particular line, I think that's that's one on page 36. What was coming out, if you like, onto the line of the project of the report, sorry, was a snapshot in time at the beginning of each month. And really what the figures underneath are talking about the average across that month of where we were with the numbers of EHCPs or the timeliness of the EHCPs. So I think that's something, again, I'm kind of going to really welcome how we, our input into and how we make sure, as Councillor Lyshon said, I'm trying to be posh today. I don't know why. I should stick to first names. I'm very, very informal. But I think the whole idea is to make sure the data that comes forward works for us and is intelligible and is helpful for us and picks on the right things that show progress or not progress so we can improve from it. So I think there's something about being clear about what those numbers are in the box or the percentages are in the boxes, and that, we have a clarity about that. I think it's important. There's a context I wanted to give as well, if I could, around the HCPs. We absolutely understand, again, nothing in these performance monitoring figures should be a surprise to the organisation and to our service, and we know this is difficult. So just wanted to be saying to you that I mean, there's always a national context which says, nationally the percentage of timeliness around the 20 weeks is sliding downwards, and it's about 50% now as a national average. That isn't the point, though. Our children are important to us, and we should be going for the best that we can do. So if we have a higher target, that's fantastic. I'm not denying that, but just to say, similarly, just for you to know, and this doesn't show in these figures, demand has risen sharply, of course, from last year. So, for instance, in the last 6 months, we received 914 requests for EHCPs. The previous year's equivalent 6 months was 734. So there's like a 24% increase in demand. Similarly, we are accepting more of the requests. So again, last year we accepted 322 requests. This year it's 510. So again, the volumes coming through our services are increasing, and we are also increasing the number of assessments we are completing. So we've done 377 last year, 461 this year, 22% uplift. Still, we acknowledge the timeliness is not what it should be, but just to give that kind of context that we are improving in our activity and our throughput, but it still doesn't help with that timeliness. And those children and families who are waiting longer than the 20 weeks, again, that's not acceptable for them, and we absolutely understand. One of the two things we're doing really primarily to improve it, one is, and we've trailed this for some time, but the restructure and the way we're organising our teams, particularly across SEND and inclusion and so on, our restructure is intended to support that work and make it better, and all our processes to improve and streamline. And that was really from effect from the 1st of April. So again, I wouldn't necessarily have expected to see any of that coming in from last year. But also we are working on, and we're working quite well on, with using magic notes to take out the drudgery elements, if you like, to keep our very skilled staff focusing on ensuring the right content is identified for that child and that assessments are correct, and working with partners to ensure that assessments are correct, but then some little AI gremlin in the background writes that up for us and makes that quicker. I mean, it can take a whole day to just write up an EHCP if you're kind of doing it manually. If there's AI to support us, that's what we're trialing, and we're a long way down the process now of having something that can help us, which we're going to test and trial. So that would be my take on the HCP. If I've missed anything, Claire, please add. I don't know if Amelia's on the call if she would want to, but that's I have sought the guidance on that.
Yeah, I think we just need to be really clear that we're not getting AI to write assessments.
No.
So that the AI tool is collating the information in terms of the assessments that have been completed by people.
Thank you.
So that they are pulling together that information into one coherent whole. That information is not then used in its AI format. It is a draft, and a very early draft, which a person who is involved in that case will then read, make sure it is accurate, make sure that there is analysis of that information, and so that EHCP can be moved through the system more quickly for children. It is important though, because the AI is reducing the amount of time that otherwise people would be taking to collate information. And with the increase of about 24–25% of volume of work in the team, and obviously the financial issues that we're facing, we do need to use as many tools as we possibly can to improve the flow and the capacity for work in that team. As we said, it's being trialled at the moment. It's not being used for real children. We're using it in draft just to try and work out if it's effective. And so far that effectiveness looks really good. Other local authorities have already taken it into the real world with using it for real children, and we're on the cusp of that. Obviously, we will talk to families when we do that to make sure that they understand why we're doing it and what that looks like, and assure them, as I hopefully have assured the committee, that this is not about AI undertaking assessment. It's about AI collating information that has been assessed by people in the system.
Okay, thank you. Fran, you indicated you wanted to speak. Was it on this topic or later on? Okay, I've got a couple more I want to go into, and then I'll come to you. Can I just come to adult social care assessments, which is on page 31? I wonder whether you could just give me. I've detected a little the commentary in the data seemed to be slightly different. That there were the data says there's a downward trend and the comment says there's an upward trend. I just wanted clarity on what that means.
So the numbers today are 164. So it is now below. The commentary is a point in time where we were at. What we wanted to put in the data is, look, at the end of May, you can see this. I asked for the data today. There's 164 waiting. It is coming down by the day and the work is completed. So it would in next, because this is obviously retrospective, not forward looking, and that's the reasoning behind it.
Thank you. I just wanted some clarity on that. I know it's been an area where I've been concerned about in the past. I'm really pleased to hear the progress, and please congratulate your team on the progress on that. Thank you very much. Next on my list was FOIs. I see we've got Rebecca Martin on the call. Rebecca, are you able to just give us some context on that FOI data and what we're doing to rectify that, please? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. We've had some challenges within the FOI team over the last few months with some sickness following bereavement, with vacancies occurring in the team because people, we've got really good staff and they get promoted elsewhere, which is great for them, not so good for us. So we've had some real sort of challenges around capacity in the team over the last few months, which we've now managed to. We've got the member of staff that was off sick back on a phased return and doing really well. We've managed to recruit some temporary resource, and we've recruited to one of the permanent vacancies as well, with one out to recruitment at the moment. So we had a dip where we had very few staff that were able to help. We did draft in some staff to help with that from our wider information governance team, but unfortunately it's sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because we do have some pressures in the DSAR areas as well. So if we take resource from that, then we build a backlog in that. So a little bit of a backlog that occurred over a number of months, 3 months, I think it was, where we had those real challenges. We're almost back up to full strength, but of course we're working through that backlog. We've had meetings yesterday and today about the way of approaching that. We've got a number in that backlog that are now well overdue, and we are still plugging away to try and resolve those with support from services providing that information. But what I've asked the team to do now is not solely focus on that backlog. We do need to resolve those cases, absolutely we do, and particularly where there are time pressures and where requesters are actively chasing for those, we are still working really hard to get those fixed. But also I do want to focus on trying to start the process for new requests coming in. So as a request comes in, we need to acknowledge it, but we also need to make a request to services for the information that's needed to fulfill the request. And my fear is if we don't start those when they come in, we're never going to get ahead of this backlog. So we are slightly deprioritising some of the, not all of, but some of the ones in the backlog in order to start getting on top of the ones that are coming in and at least launching that process so that we can start to chip away and get compliance with the newer requests. So it's a difficult situation and not a perfect solution because there is that clutch from 3 months, some of which have been resolved, some of which are outstanding and being actively chased, and some of which are a little dormant. And you know, the service around those complaints around those FOI requests hasn't been as we would like. But I do think we need to split our focus and try and prioritise some of the new requests coming through. Otherwise, the backlog is going to just continue to roll on. So we've got the wheels in motion to do it. We are putting a little bit more support towards that from elsewhere in the team where we can. But as I say, that's tricky because of work pressures in other areas as well.
Okay, thank you for your reassurance on that, and that there is a plan in place to move through that backlog, and I wish you well with getting there, and thank you for your endeavours in doing that. Thank you.
That's okay.
Mike, are we any luck with Mr. Davis? Okay, so okay, could I ask if I think you'll refer to it in it, Mr. Sharkey. So I hope that won't be too embarrassing for you. My next question was going to be a follow-up to this as well. So, if we could take that statement in response.
So this is a statement of Mike Davis, or the question from Mike Davis. I've yet to meet anyone who has a planning application or pre-app in the last 2 years who has had a painless experience. Bill Revens kindly met with me and Donna Collier on May 22nd to go through in detail 3 applications. In simple terms, you do not have a 5-year land supply, your application system is less than perfect, and you force pre-apps but do not respond in a timely manner. Everyone says the problem is you do not have enough officers. Those that you do are not managed because you are grateful they log in mainly from home. Each month, the 33-page report highlights number of applications and your success in signing them off within statutory limits or not. Councils are not showing how many applications are sitting awaiting decisions after that time limit and for how long. There is no understanding of how appalling it really is. Do you know how many applications have the clock reset? How many pre-apps are not responded to? If the executive committee and councillors do not have the basic facts and figures, how can you hope to make effective decisions? The more I have looked at planning, the more I have realised that the main issue is that reasonable decisions are not being made. This is what might be described as the arrogance of monopoly, which you are. If planning was run properly, there would be a 1 or 2 page, well-formatted report and clear actions on any application that went a month beyond statutory sign-off period. I would also recommend for any applications of more than 4 weeks over the decision date, a meeting is held weekly to force the decision. I accept for larger scale developments this is more difficult, but you could start with 8-week developments. My contention is planning is being made needlessly difficult and officers decided to bore councils into submission. I'll be happy to help FOC on compiling stats into meaningful data that councils can hold officers to account on. Committee, the main problem with planning is organisation and decision making, not resource. It seems you are more worried about subjective views of officers than developing homes and economic activity for Somerset residents. Inevitably, this will mean increasing taxes on current residents. Somerset Council are in financial difficulties. Your largest revenue is from council tax. Surely making decisions helps you fix black holes and at least covers the CEO's £5,000 pay rise. Who here can say that they fully understand the issues and extent of applicants' problems if you do not have the data in an easily accessible format to generate measurable actions that will deliver some of the services you should be providing?
Thank you very much. And I'll read the response from the service area, and then I've got a question which refers derives from that, which refers to the performance report. So thank you, Mr. Davis, for your question, and also for meeting with me and your frankness about the service. I do apologise for the experiences that you have had, and you are not alone in expressing these concerns. I can assure you that I've raised the concerns directly with the Chief Executive. We are very aware of the concerns and are seeking to address them as a priority, as we all want to provide a quality and efficient planning service. In bringing together the former districts and county, we have 6 different legacy IT systems in the service, so extracting consistent data is not simple. We have commissioned an external company to support with the data extraction and to give real-time information to provide the data and understand the reasons why applications are delayed. We have established a planning stability board to bring focus on the areas of change needed and drive progress in the development management service, as well as holding the other associated council services to account where their performance impacts on the ability of the planning service to determine applications. In the last 2 weeks, we have introduced a short interval management approach with daily check-ins with officers to reduce the work in progress. Progress will be monitored through the Planning Stability Board, of which Councillor Rigby is a member. Not all the delays perceived to be held by planning are as a result of the failures in the planning service. As you know, the planning service relies on advice from statutory consultees to input to planning applications. Biodiversity Net Gain has certainly provided a challenge in this regard, and last week the government issued a consultation on proposals to make the process simpler for small and medium-sized developments. There is a high volume service area, and where resources use occur, especially in recruiting and retaining planning staff, it directly impacts on policy development, pre-application advice and determination, etc. So the point that Mr. Davis was made to me very forcibly in my meeting with him was looking at the performance data that we see on page 8 of the appendix. It's coloured in green. Are we measuring the right things?
Chris online? It's Chris first.
I've got Chris online, and I've got Mrs. Alison Blom-Cooper hunting for a microphone.
I'll
Good
go
morning,
first
Chris.
if I may. Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure that we're presenting as much data as we could to the committee. So we are reporting the right things in the context of those national benchmarks. But I think given the difficulties we're having in the DM service, there is more data that we could provide to members to help them understand where we are in regards to work in progress or the backlog, and also in regards to the level of complaints and service requests that we're getting. So we fully acknowledge that the service is in a very difficult place. That's why the Planning Stability Board was implemented in the first place. What we need to be able to do is identify the improvements in the work in progress volumes as we apply the interventions under the planning stability arrangement. So we do need better data. We need to give you more information as a committee, and we need to be able to show you that that data is changing with the interventions that we apply. Thank you.
Can I just add to that? We do a much more detailed report to the Strategic Planning Committee on a quarterly basis, which sets out a lot more detailed information than is coming through the performance regime at the moment. But as Chris says, we are developing that. We are going to be adding to that in terms of complaints, and I hope very much that we'll be able to report where we are in terms of work in progress and applications which are being held up, and more importantly, the reasons why they're being held up, so that we can start to tackle those issues.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Alison, for acknowledging the situation and for the actions that you're taking to address them. We know it's not an ideal situation, and certainly my postbag does reflect issues that do come from planning, and that's from city, town, and parish councils and the development industry in total. And it is an area that we're particularly concerned with, and I do want to see it further highlighted in our performance reporting, please. Okay, that's all from me. I've got Fran Smith, who's indicated to speak. Anybody else? Fran.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question with regard to page 14 and housing. We've got several areas in housing in order to protect our tenants and to look after our properties.
that have 100% KPIs, and those including asbestos and Legionella checks. There's no tolerance on those, so we have to hit 100%, which I can see by Q4 we have managed to almost complete all of those, but there are still a couple outstanding. What can we do as a council to ensure that we continue this level? And I understand often the reasons why we can't always hit 100% is access to our properties. So what can we do to ensure that we do get access to our properties in order to protect our tenants and our accommodation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fran. So that's page 40 of the council papers and 14 of the appendix, just so that we're clear as to which page we're on. We've got two different sorts of page numbers going on, so you were right, but people might be slightly confused to find themselves on a different paper. Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, there are various improvements happening within the performance for the housing service. I think in terms of the question itself, what can we do? Well, the council, through its two legacy landlord models, have had a slightly different approach to injunctions and forcing entry. And by forcing, I mean via the courts rather than anything else. So we have combined that process. We are now working more collaboratively across the two organisations to take best practice from each. We are altering the injunction process. So where a tenant refuses to give access or is consistently unavailable to give access to their property for something that is a regulatory or statutory requirement, gas, electrical, Legionella, etc., we will be going via the courts and we will be seeking an injunction. We've started to do that and we're seeing some improvements. What we're also now doing is collecting up the various statutory requirements. So when we get an injunction, we don't just get one for that gas safety inspection. We will go for the gas and the electrical and any other outstanding inspections that are due on that property or any others that might be due in the coming months. So we'll try and now collate all of those together so that we'll get one injunction that will grant us access to the property and then be able to complete all of those elements. So we should start to see that continuous improvement over time where we're getting better access. There is also a mechanism for us to recover our costs through the tenants. How practical that will be in the actual recovery, we've yet to see, but we do have the ability to apply costs as well.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Federica, do you want to add?
I think Chris has covered a lot of it. I think a lot of it is around us just bearing in mind and looking at understanding our tenants. And we take this or some of these numbers to our tenant services boards across both of the models that we run. And it's about, there are some tenants that look to, that don't allow us in. And I think we've now got that approach where we can go all the way through to courts and looking at doing all of the things at once when we do gain access. A lot of it is also understanding, and we get this feedback regularly about understanding that these are people's homes, that people work, and trying to make sure that we work in tune with them, but also understanding that we have to go in, that we need to be able to do these checks. So it's about communication and relationship between us as the landlord and them as the tenant.
Are there any other lead members or associate lead members that want to talk? So I've got Councillor Tom Power and Councillor Bob Filmer hang on a second. This is good job. This isn't an auction. In fact, if it could be, maybe we could solve our financial problems. So we'll go Tom first, and then Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on the, it's on section 21, the risk score. There's no figures on the template. I just wanted to just query that one. And then also you've touched on the freedom of information requests. So with the amount that's coming through, is it just because a lot of residents have said to me about the freedom of information, if there's so many coming through, is it because the council's not being quite as transparent as we should be? And then also I want to touch on the complaints score, which is the target score is normally 75%, but it's been, nowhere near all year long. And also how are you going to address that? And then also, can we also have a breakdown of the complaints that we are getting? You haven't got to give it to me now, but if possible, have that in writing or in an email. Thank you.
I think Becky's gone through all the FOI points in a lot of detail. It's certainly not a lack of transparency. It is a resource issue. And I wanted to highlight that we are taking steps to do that in the public domain because I felt it was really important, and you're right to raise that. Becky, do you want to pick up the complaints reporting?
Yes, certainly. Certainly, we will be. I'm in the middle of producing a annual report that will give that full breakdown by service area of what complaints we're getting, so what they're about, and how performance is looking in each of the service areas. So it has been a very tough year, and I think part of that is down to reorganisation. Part of it is down to resourcing, but there is also an element of, we need to do some more work with services to reprioritise some of this stuff. We have had some issues with, there's been a lot of changes in staff. So people that we used to rely on as a central complaints team to support us in certain areas are no longer there, and therefore we're having to train new people. So there's challenges around that, but that's sort of side issues really, and we do need to concentrate on the performance. There are some positive in currently doing the annual report. The average resolution time, now bear in mind we do strive for 10 working days and we're not meeting that generally, but the average working days that complaints were outstanding for in 23-24 was 22 working days across all services. For 24-25 it is now 17, so we have made some progress on that. Part of the way that we're doing that is that we now are fully resourced within the central team, and we are working with particularly those high volume areas that get complaints to have regular weekly meetings to help them with the triaging of complaints, help them get to the sort of nub of the issues, because quite often we get very long-winded, 8-9 page complaints, and it can be really time consuming in actually trying to pull out what it is we're responding. And so my team are really supporting around that. One of the issues, as Councillor Shearer said earlier, if you look at SND, which is quite a large area for complaints, the volume that we're getting, particularly in our complex services. So in terms of between the 2 years, 23, 24 and 24, 25, overall complaints have reduced by 7%. So it's not a huge reduction, but it is a reduction. Part of that is because we are now being much firmer about rejecting things that aren't complaints and should be service requests, and my team are doing that to take some of that pressure away from services. But what we are seeing is that there's quite a consistent increase in complaints around our sort of very complex areas like SND. SEN, sorry, and what we are doing is there's regular weekly meetings, but I've also been involved in this last week in terms of recruiting to one of the posts in the new structure, which is around resolution there, with the intention that actually being involved in that recruitment and then working very closely with that post holder, we can start to move things forward a little better and a little quicker. So lots going on. It still is very challenging because the complexity of the complaints we're receiving is quite difficult, but confident that we can make improvements on that.
Anything to add, Fred? No. Bob, next.
Thank you, Leader. It was page 28 relating to waste services. The first question was on SCCPO1, which is the household cumulative waste. We missed our target last year. We seem to have missed it by a greater amount this year, and that despite there's a section in there saying that the street cleansing waste amount being disposed of has gone down. So why has that gone down, and is that offsetting a bigger deterioration in terms of us missing our targets? And the second question is the following one, which is CPO2, which is talking about the amount that we reuse and recycle. It's gone green, although the figure is worse than it was when it was red. So does that mean we've changed our target and reduced our target for recycling and reusing? And if so, why are we reducing targets when surely we should be increasing them?
Good spot on that last point. I normally go through and mark it as like a homework, and I missed that one. Fred, do you want to pick that one up?
I was just going to pick up the street cleansing aspect that's being picked up in the waste, because I flagged this as well, Bob. It's actually because of the transfer of street cleansing to Bridgewater Town Council. So that waste will still be being dealt with. It's just not being picked up in our figures by our street cleansing team because the process has been devolved.
Thank you. Richard, do you want to pick up the point? I'm looking at that data and I'm thinking the target's 51.46%. I'm wondering whether some of the red should be green rather than the other way around.
I think there's different targets for different quarters, because we have seasonal variation in terms of what we expect in terms of our recycling rates. So, yeah, apologies. At first glance, it is harder to understand. We can certainly look at how we make that clearer, and I think maybe showing the targets by quarter and that variation might help.
So where I'm reading in the tolerance, it says +4 -1% per year. Does that mean that variance is at different points and different points of the year?
Yes, there'll be different targets for different quarters, and then the variance is applied to each quarter.
Okay.
If that makes sense, but we can certainly make that clearer, because I think at first glance, I agree, it's tricky to pick up.
Does that help with your question, Bob?
I think certainly some clarity would be helpful.
We get different targets for Christmas, I think is what I'm understanding.
It was just the first line there refers to the fact that the target for last year was 56%. So it was just where that target now is, because it appears to be 56 last year, and then we're now targeting 51.46. So that clarity would be really helpful.
Yeah, and the 51.46 is quarter 4. The annual target overall for the year is the 56. So we certainly need to make it clearer, and we'll spell that out for you.
Thanks for the clarity on that. Yes, and well spotted. Eagle eyes from Brent. I've got Sue Osborne next.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. In paragraph 4 in the opening report, in the overall report, you're referring that we're going to be operating from a revised set of performance criteria, and that you're looking to have these ready by Q1 for 25-26. What sort of briefing is going to be given? Because obviously, if you are changing these figures, and we've just about got used to reviewing the report in that format, what sort of briefing is going to be given to members in terms of what's changing and what to look for? That's my first question.
Want me to pick them up in turn? Yeah, so we are focusing in terms of any revisions to the metrics on those areas, in particular. Some of those we have covered today, like the EHCPs, potentially recycling and others, to make sure that we're really clear on what we're measuring, so that we can understand the impact and the progress. So we're going to be prioritising those measures, and we will make sure that we brief members, so that you are briefed on the changes from the current Q4 report to that next Q1 report.
Thank you. So just to confirm, the new data set is going to be from next quarter. So the next set report we receive will be a different format to this.
Yes, that's my understanding of the answer you just had. But Sarah, correct me. We'll try and do it in a different way.
Well, what I was just going to, I was going to come back to the point that at the next executive meeting, we'll be bringing the performance management framework. And what that does is it sets out, yes, it will be a revised, Q1 will be a revised set of indicators. Actually, it will be a much more comprehensive set of measures, so that what we're not just looking at is these KPIs, numerical measures. We're actually looking at the work that we are doing as a council and how is that impacting. And we will be doing a member briefing on the performance management framework, which will share how that will work.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Sarah and Sarah. Next question, please, Sue.
Yeah. At the very beginning as well, in the intro paper, you have the diagram of the golden thread, which shows the 4 priorities. But yet Appendix A, you actually now have 5 priorities, because you've added another one, effective, efficient, sustainable council. So you've now got 5 of them, and indeed a lot of performance indicators are now falling under this 5th one. So it's just sort of more for clarity that you've got 4 in that golden thread diagram at the beginning, and you've actually now taken it down into 5. That's absolutely fine, not a problem with that. But
Yeah,
it just,
I think that was a reflection of the financial emergency declaration, but I'll bring in Councillor Leisham.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say we've been working with that overarching priority for quite some time now, and it makes perfect sense to me. I hope it does to all colleagues.
yeah, okay, that's fine. And my third question is on page 14 of I think the sort of public reports pack, and it's page 14. It's a housing one, SC CSH 12A, and this is the percentage of tenants that are overall satisfied with the housing service provided by Homes in Somerset. And what I'm curious to know is between Q3 and Q4, you've gone from 85.71%, which is great, but you've had a 10% drop to 75.77. I'm just curious to know, why has there been that 10% drop? And what steps are you taking to address the issues identified? Because this could be a sort of more a symptom of perhaps maybe something brewing far deeper. Thank you.
Thank you. So just for clarity, that's on page 40 of the pack, 14 of the appendix.
14.
So just, I know it's slightly confusing when we've got two sets of numbers. Federal response.
Thanks, Sue, for that question. You are right that customer satisfaction dipped in that time from in December and into January of Q4. In speaking to the Director of Customer at Homes in Somerset, they mainly on doing some analysis that actually think it's due to the impacts of the high winds and exceptional poor weather that we had then a huge influx of calls that came about from that. Although it's difficult to say with 100% certainty, looking at that analysis does kind of give a correlation between overall satisfaction along with the call handling performance throughout that time. There was that huge storm on the 7th of December where customers did need to seek additional repairs. We also had the roof damage at Westfield Close, creating additional pressures. When we actually then look at how it's looking in March and April, it looks like performance has returned to those high pre-January levels. So we do think it's seasonal and from those storms.
Thank you. I've got Chris who would like to embellish or enhance Federica's answer.
Yeah, if I may. So taking nothing away from what Federica said, we've actually seen some of the annual returns for the TSM measures, so the tenant satisfaction measures from Homes in Somerset, get it right now, and their performance is on average above the performance of top quartile Almos in the region. So there is a significant improvement. We'll want to do something publicly around that because it's a great result from them. So they have made significant changes and their performance is above average of top quartile in their comparable sector.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions and answers. And on to Diogo next.
Thanks, Chair. Two things from me, but the first one, I think Councillor Power asked about page 25, the risk score, and I think you were indicating to come maybe answer earlier on. So could we get a response?
Oh, sorry, did I miss a question? I'm really sorry. My apologies, Tom.
Thank you. I think the question earlier was, on page 25, the risk is blank. There will obviously be risks at operational and tactical levels associated with these KPIs that are tracked through services. We also have our strategic risks. Going forwards from Q1, we will be bringing the strategic risk report at the same time to executive as the corporate performance reports, that we can look at those in the round. So ordinarily we wouldn't sort of give a risk to the performance paper overall, but what we will be doing is bringing those strategic risks and any high scoring operational or tactical risks to you alongside our corporate performance report so that we can do the join up and have the conversation in the round.
Thank you. Well spotted, Diogo, and I hope that answer was satisfactory. Tom, Diogo, on to your questions now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just two from me. So page 39 of the pack, 13 of the appendix, to save you that job. Just on the complaints, the officer mentioned earlier that the year before last, the average kind of, if I got my figures right, the average days was 22 days, last year 17 days. And we are where we are today. I'm just wondering, I mean, clearly we're not reaching that target of 75% that we've set ourselves. And I'm just wondering, is 75% target a realistic target, bearing in mind that we've not been able to achieve anywhere near it in the last 2 years, it may just give us some more realistic kind of way to measure success, if you like, bearing that in mind. And also, in regard to the FOI and the complaints part, a lot of it, what we've heard is about resources, and appreciate what's happened over the last year with staffing changes, etc. So my question on that is, do we anticipate that those staffing resources pressures will subside quite soon, or is that something we're going to see continuing in the next quarter or two that will carry on impacting the scores such as those on FOI and complaints and probably others? That's the first one.
Councillor Liz Dyson to respond.
Thank you. Just taking my wrap-up comments, actually. I wanted to make the point that quarter four, of course, was coming to the end of our restructuring programme for staff in this council. And when we get to quarter one reporting, we will have had a lot of people in post, in new posts, who may have moved in the council, who may be new to the council, and there may be areas where we've got lesser resources than we had in the past. So I think while I thank the officers who are working on all of this really important work, I do acknowledge that quarter four will not have been as easy as I would like it to have been for them, and that will still be the same in quarter one, but that will be, quarter one will be moving to a steadier position and a more permanent position, and therefore a more promising and encouraging position. But I do acknowledge that we have been doing and are still doing, and you will have heard me presenting huge numbers of reports and frameworks recently that we absolutely need for this council to be in a really good position. And that work will continue for some time yet. Nobody creates a new council overnight. I think the leader of council said something about LGR being a process, not an event. And I think we're the living proof of that. And we'll be passing that experience and knowledge now onto other councils that will be moving towards LGR soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm starting to describe it as an adventure rather than a but certainly that is something I'm sharing experience with a number of councils at the moment who some have LGR thrust upon them. Fred, did you want to pick up that point? And I know we got Becky online as well, be in front of me as well.
Thank you, Diego. I think it's always worthwhile questioning what our targets should be and whether we need to reduce them. And clearly, as you've said, that we've not met those targets as Rebecca laid out. However, we have seen those improvements. I think for me, I wouldn't want to move that complaint target down. I think it's about making sure that we work with the teams across the council, because clearly this is where we pull everything together in the complaint team. And because the longer that you make someone wait, the more they're likely to chase the response. And also you want to see it like we do well with the customer contact centre, that if you can resolve that query at first point of contact, or in this case within the first stage of the complaint, it doesn't escalate then to a second stage. So I think we should hold ourselves high, continually look to reach for that target. But I think a lot of it is, as Rebecca alluded to, working with the teams to make sure that they understand the importance of dealing with complaints, that they've got the training that they need, which I've given to them over the past 2 years, and to allow ourselves as an organisation to settle down. We've gone through a huge amount of tumultuous things over the past couple of years. Complaints will obviously be a bearing of that, and we now need our teams to be able to settle down and then concentrate on these.
Okay, anything to add, Rebecca?
Yeah, just to echo that, really, that whilst at the moment the target 75% feels a little unmanageable, I think it is appropriate to keep it up there, because I think we want to strive for that. We've also got to bear in mind the position of the Ombudsman around this as well. So the Ombudsman has a new handling code, which they've launched softly this year for implementation officially at the beginning of the next financial year. And that does place a demand on local authorities to acknowledge complaints within 5 working days, and then the 10 working days starts at the point of acknowledgement. So a complaint could be, effectively, it could be up to 15 days for resolution, but if we acknowledge them quicker, it's a shorter timeline. So I think given that there is that pressure and that there is that demand from the Ombudsman, I wouldn't really want to lower that target, and I'd want to sort of put everything I've got into better meeting that with the services.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Next question, Diogo, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just the last one. So this one's just to touch on the EHC, page 36 or page 10. So earlier on in the report, it says that the percentage of EHC assessments completed within 20 weeks has dropped further in this quarter. I think, to me, looking at the figures at 3%, I'd say more like it's collapsed in the last quarter. And I noted the lead member saying that 50% is kind of the national average. We're at 3%, and we've been under our target of 64% all year long. I think I appreciate all the work that's going on, I really do, but clearly it's unacceptable, that 3% figure, because it's not just numbers, it's livelihoods, it's people's lives, it's people potentially requiring support that aren't getting that support across our county. I note in the commentary there that the business case has been submitted to increase capacity, and I generally hope that's something that comes forward really, really quickly and is accepted by whoever's got to sign that off. But again, that 64% target, I'm just wondering, is that a target that we're going to be trying to hit again over the next year, or is that again something that's not perhaps achievable?
If I just come back, I mean, thank you, and I'm sorry to see the 3% on Q4, because for two reasons. One, on one day in that month, that was what our achievement was. Across the whole month, it's 15. Okay, it's bigger than 3. It's not where we want it to be, but please.
Sorry to interrupt. My understanding that's quarterly data. So would it be one day in the quarter?
Sorry.
Rather than one day in the month?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you so much. You're absolutely right. So on what in that period, on one day in that period, our performance is 3%. Across the whole, it was 15. It's still not right, and it's still going the wrong direction. But just please, that was one of the things I was so keen. We were so keen to get that commentary underneath that box, because data comes in all of its forms, and it was on that singular day. So I have not heard anything from the service to say that we should not be striving for 64%, and I think I'd like it to be higher, obviously. It's not a thing we're going to walk back from, and it is something, all the things we're talking about are in plain desire to get to that better service for children and for families. So that's the best answer I can give you back, but please, I would just ask that the 3%, although it's a published figure there, it's actually, please take the 15% as what that last quarter was, and that's not acceptable, but that is closer to the accuracy for that quarter than the 3% would be.
Okay, thank you for those questions, but just bear in mind the very substantial increase in demand in that service as well, as which is lying behind those figures declining. And no, I wouldn't want to see that target being any lower, because quite rightly, these are the life chances of young people in our communities, and quite rightly we want to put that caring for them at the heart of what we do. Morning, Lucy. Councillor Trimnell.
Morning, Chair. Thank you. So I have 3 questions. I think I'm probably okay to put them all in together. I don't think they're too hideous.
We'll try and cope with not forgetting one of them, but I've already got a track record of forgetting one of Tom's. So.
Well, let's see how it goes. So I noticed that on page 30, which I haven't got a page number on here to give you an alternative, it's about page 6 or 7 or something. But the number of new placements in nursing and residential care. Now, this is clearly fluctuating, and these are people. And when we're dealing with people, things change. And I'm not sure. I just wonder whether, if we're measuring against this target all the time, you can't compete against those targets, I don't think, in terms of if you just happen in 1 month to have a large number of people who need that care, you're going to come out red, and red is a symbol of falling behind. And so I just wonder whether it seems fair to be able to, or to be monitoring that so tightly when we can see that, you know, we achieved it in November and December last year, and then, you know, we've gone right back up and a little bit down now. So I just wanted some sort of commentary on that, on whether it's appropriate to be measuring so tightly those numbers when we don't necessarily have control over it, other than to leave people uncared for. My second question was about on page 32, so the Overdue Care Act assessment. Now it says that there's a change in the way that this is measured. And I wondered if you could explain the difference between the old way and the new way, because it looks, when you look at the numbers, I think it was 204 people or something in the middle of May. That's a huge jump and or a fall, sorry. And so I just wondered, you know, what is happening to the people who are no longer being counted in this new measure? That was that question. And then the third question was page 33. And it was homes not meeting expected standard, and it's falling overall, but it's still way above that target. And I just wondered if you knew what's being done to make us fall, even though it's a very small reduction each month. And are these homes out of service at the moment, or are people actually living in them? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first two questions, I think, were from Mel.
No problem at all. In terms of the care homes, it's a national figure that we have to report against. It's really important that we make sure that the right people are going into the right homes. One of the issues we have is around capital drops or depleted funds. So when people run out of their money that they have and they then become ours to manage and to support. And that fluctuates. And I can't really do a lot about that. But within our Better Care Fund and nationally, we are expected to hit a target. We are about average across the country. So I want to make sure we're doing that. The other thing is, it's about what people want, but it's also about making sure that people aren't going in too early and that we're supporting people at home as much as possible. So yes, the figure fluctuates. That's life sometimes. What we don't have in, what we do also look at is the amount of people that leave our services, whether that be moving from residential to nursing, which is counted in this, or leave the service and die. So that is also part of this equation. One of the things that's happening nationally, though, is everybody's slightly measuring things slightly differently. So there is a piece of work going on to just check we're all measuring everything in the same way. So it's apples and apples, not apples and pears. So I absolutely understand what you're talking about, but we will have to keep measuring it. It's the right thing to do to check our practice is also in the right way.
Okay, and the decent home standard question, Federica.
You want me to do?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Care
There was a Oh, sorry.
Care Act assessments, we haven't changed the way in which we're managing it. What we have changed is the way in which we monitor it. So our teams are monitoring it really closely. So that hasn't changed. And the drop is threefold. One, what we did with our Newton is have a look at productivity, but also have a look at the way in which we are delivering. So we changed the way in which we're doing things. That's working really well for us. We've managed it appropriately. We have got more staff in our one area that we were struggling with. So that's also helped us in that space. And as I said, it's reduced today to 164. My expectation is by the end of September, we have nobody waiting more than 2 months for a Care Act assessment. And I think the team are really confident that we'll get there.
Theo, do you want to briefly come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on that point. So just to be clear that I understand it, we've had a backlog of overdue care assessments for over a year, fluctuating from sort of the high 300s to up to 400 about a year ago, and even last, you know, in these figures it was still 315. But what you're saying is you've taken that down to 164, so you've nearly pretty much halved that in a very short period of time, and you're expecting that to come down to zero, did you say?
No.
No?
I said nobody will be waiting more than 2 months for a Care Act assessment. I'm expecting it to be really low. So I'm expecting there's going to be 1 or 2 in each area, but I am really expecting that to be the 1s and 2s, not more than that.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight what a phenomenal achievement that appears to be, how much of a change that really is, and I just think it needs to be make sure we've all really noticed it.
I certainly have. Federica.
So in relation to the decent home standard, it doesn't mean that our properties aren't safe to live in. There are multiple elements that look to give where we judge ourselves or get rated on in relation to what makes up the decent home standard. So that can be whether the loft insulation needs doing, whether it's new windows, or there's something to do with the heating. It may need a new kitchen or a chimney being looked at. So it's about looking at all of those elements and making sure that then we do the maintenance and the work that needs to take place. Part of that will be about gaining access to the previous question that was asked around accessibility by Councillor Fran Smith. If we can't gain access to do that work, we then obviously rate ourselves differently and we look to work with them. Not everyone wants a new kitchen put in when we offer it to them as well. It's about giving people choice to do that and working with the tenants and communicating with them.
Okay, thanks very much for those questions and answers. So if we can first of all move on to the recommendations. We're asked to review the performance information provided within Appendix A, and in particular the narrative relating to the performance in this quarter, which I believe we've done. That doesn't require a resolution to be passed, as I understand it. And so all that remains for me to do is to thank Sarah for our excellent report, and I look forward to receiving the next quarter's update. Okay, so I understand that Ian from the Oak Academy is online and ready to do his questions. So we could take with members' indulgence, take the Hillview School item now and swap 9 and 8 around. Is that okay with everybody? And everyone's nodding and looking happy about that. So Ian, are you with us and online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good morning, Ian. And
Good
would
morning.
you like to give your statement? Officially, it's 3 minutes, but I'm not going to put a stopwatch on you.
Thank you, Bill. Hopefully it will be 3 minutes. There is a group of children and young people in Somerset who for many years have been failed by our education system. These are often the students whose needs were deemed too complex for mainstream school, who face multiple rejections, exclusions, and placements in alternative provision or pupil referral units. For some, this has meant years outside of formal education altogether. These young people are often referred to as hard cases, but that phrase masks the reality. These are children with untapped potential, whose life chances have been dismissed, not because of who they are, but because of a system that hasn't worked for them. Hillview was created as a part of Somerset's strategy to change that. It's a different kind of special school, one designed specifically for this group of children, many of whom are suffering the consequences of trauma, instability, and the cumulative impact of exclusion. As noted in your report, without Hillview, these pupils would have very limited and more costly alternatives. The Oak Partnership is proud to be a strategic partner with Somerset Council. Together, we have already extended provision at Selworthy School over 3 sites, and we were pleased to have the opportunity to take on the running of Hillview School. In preparation, we worked with Somerset officers as they consulted on placements, and we staffed the school in accordance with those shared expectations. As the school opened, the needs we encountered were more complex and more entrenched than we anticipated, but we adapted quickly because if we were to break the cycle of failure, we had to do things differently. That meant redesigning the curriculum, rethinking how we support behaviour and well-being, and investing significantly in the right people and structures, and for some children providing off-site alternative provision. As part of that transformation, we'd worked with Somerset Council and the Department for Education to revise the funding model, because the old one simply didn't reflect the level of need or the intensity of provision required. The decision today is part of a broader process, a step towards a long-term sustainable agreement that enables us to meet these children's needs properly, working together to monitor provision and funding on a termly basis. A strategic partnership that enables Somerset Council and the Oak Partnership Trust to deliver the education and life chances that these children and young people need. This is a paper about funding, but it's really about children who deserve better. If we're serious about making a difference, then we must also be serious about investing in that difference. Success for these vulnerable young people will not come cheaply, but the cost of continued failure is far higher. Thank you, Bill. There's no question.
Thank you, Ian. Just a brief response from Councillor Shearer, and then we'll move on to the Hillview report item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, and thank you, Susan. Very glad to see both of you here with us online. I have got a very short response because I'm sure we'll be talking about this through the debate, and so I just wanted to keep my answer quite brief. But also, just before I start the answer, I just wanted to say, you mentioned hard cases. You're absolutely right. We have complex children for whom we have to try harder. And I thank you again for putting children in the heart of what this is a financial paper. This is a financial problem we're trying to address together through that strategic partnership. But it's children at the heart of it. So the thank you for that, and I'm glad we keep that focus. As you'd expect us to say, I completely agree that our shared focus is to ensure that our most complex children have the best educational opportunities that we can offer. The paper tabled for this meeting about Hillview School's financial situation, I hope also reflects that ambition. We look forward to continue to work with the school and with the trust. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the response there. And we now move on to the substantive item of agenda item 9, Hillview School, which is a supplementary report. Councillor Heather Shearer to introduce, and then hand over to Claire Winter and Amelia Walker.
Thank you again. I'll try not to keep it and make it too long. It's pretty much what I've said, what's in the beginning of the report, but I just wanted to make a couple of points, if I may, because this is a really important report and important decision. So the document that is before us is a decision report concerning financial support for the school. This is a special school, state-funded special school in Somerset, built by the DFE and operated by our partners Oak Partnership and Multi-Academy Trust. The school has encountered operational and financial challenges since its opening, and the report outlines the school's history and current situation, which I think is very important to get our heads around, and also the potential financial implications for the council of the challenges faced by the school and recommendations for the council's part in addressing the immediate funding needs of the school. The report makes very clear that the operational challenges have resulted in increasing costs, including additional expenditure to address the impact of the building design issues, increased staff costs to manage the complex needs of the children, and a loss of income to the trust due to the inability to increase pupil numbers in the timescales we had initially planned. One of the reasons for bringing this before you is, of course, one of the impacts of that is, or effects of that, I should say, I hate the word impact. One of the effects of that is that it'll have an effect, a negative effect on our cumulative deficit on the dedicated schools grant. So whereas we had been projecting in March 2025 that deficit on our dedicated schools grant would reach 99.125 million, the decision I hope we'll take today will actually mean that will increase to 100.58 million. A small increase, but any increase on that very crucial deficit is important, which is why we're bringing it to you today. The report outlines why that money is needed, and it is primarily to support the school across the this current academic year. I challenge myself all the time with academic years and financial years that are not quite coterminous, but it's to support the school through the current academic year, and also to support those children who would have been attending, could they attend. Again, just to say, I'm very pleased that our officers from finance and education are actively engaged with the school, the trust and the DFE, Department for Education, to ensure swift resolution of these issues, and that appropriate funding by each party involved is sought and secured to relieve those financial pressures. It will help us all collectively and us as the council to meet our statutory duty to ensure pupils are financially supported for their special educational needs. It will help hopefully to stabilise the school's financial position, of course, and we do know and recognise and are absolutely committed to full and continued engagement and collaboration between all parties. I think the main thing also, it is about the report is about us taking sensible steps and showing you the sensible steps we're taking to manage our deficit within the dedicated schools grant. But most importantly, we're also trying to ensure that those 57 children in the school and the many we hope will follow to school as time goes on will actually get good quality education close to home. So that was my intro to the, I don't know if I wanted to hand over now to our officers, please.
I would hand over to Amelia Walker, who's the Service Director for Education.
Thank you. Just by way of recognition, I think it's important to acknowledge the extensive work that took place over many months and is ongoing between the Trust, the school, the local authority and the Department for Education. And I would just like to acknowledge the professionalism and the dedication throughout by Ian, who has just addressed us, and his team, and to say that operationally, we will obviously be continuing after this decision to work very closely with the school and trust, and our operational focus will be on the academic year 25-26, which is a key next step. Hillview is critically important to Somerset children. I think Ian articulated that better than we ever could. But let me emphasize that while this is an exceptional step because we had not forecast this expenditure, we are asking for a variation of process, not of policy, and we have used the existing policy to identify this additional funding, which is important, and we will continue to work within the Council's policy framework. So can I just say, I think the rest is outlined clearly in the paper, but the critical thing for us as a service is supporting the school to flourish, supporting the children within the school to achieve their educational aims, and continuing to work collegially with the Trust.
Okay, thank you very much. Just want to drill down a little bit more into how we found ourselves in this position, please. I'm very minded that we didn't build the school, and this isn't the only school that the DFE has built in Somerset with which we find ourselves in some dissatisfaction.
Yes, indeed. I think there are a number of factors, and I'm sure anything I miss out, my colleagues will pick up admirably for me. But there's a number of things that have. There's a real narrative to this story, which is that the school is something that this council made a bid back in 2018 to have a school through one of the DFE WAVE programs to actually get to get the funding to build this particular school. Once that was achieved, pretty much everything else after that was very much in the Department for Education's hands, plus the Trust, plus ourselves to a degree. The Trust has changed over time. So a lot of the initial work that was done in 2018, 19, 2020 was with a different set of players, essentially, because it was a different trust that had been identified. A lot of the work was done, and it was exactly the DFE's build. There were some delays, which you would expect with hindsight on things like COVID, but in actual fact, that was a school that was at least 2 years behind in its delivery, perhaps more. The trust also, the initial trust changed very late in the day, and exactly that. I'm pleased Amelia said it admirably and professionally. Oak Partnership came into the frame to pick up a project at the very end, after which many things had been decided, not least the design of the school and the quality of the school build. They were inheriting rather than having any kind of investment in. So that they have come right in at the end. There was terrible situations with the state of the school in terms of the design of it, some fundamental designs and some fundamental actually build. And that's we're grateful to be getting money back from the DFE, or we're not. The DFE are acknowledging that and are putting money into improving it. But it meant the school doors opened in September 24 with a school that was not really fit for purpose in so many ways. So that's some of the reason why we find ourselves in that position. We did assess jointly with the trust those children who were coming forward into the school, but of course they were assessed at home, having been at home partly largely through these delays, possibly for 2 years, because the school was not there and they had to be educated at home instead. And we kept thinking it was coming online and not coming online. So it was a harder ask for everybody, and for the brand new school team, for new cohort of children in a school that wasn't working from September. And that was where a lot of the problems started. Yes. Amelia's got a hand up to add more to that, I think.
Yeah, so to clarify my understanding, in 2018, the school opened 2 years late in 2024. 6 years later, 2 years late.
2 years late, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that my understanding correct? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Amelia, do you want to help us understand this a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so there are two systemic issues which we are very cognizant of at this time. One of them is about the historic, though of relatively recent history, design failures in DFE built schools in Somerset, and also reported nationally. And you'll be familiar, Bill, better than most, of the ongoing discussions in relation to Haygrove Secondary in Bridgewater, which remains an unsafe new build portion of the building, which is no longer accessible and will need to be replaced. And we're working closely with the DFE. And I would recognise the commitment the DFE have shown over the past 6 to 9 months, and certainly since the election, that has been apparent with the new team to rectify some of these failings. But the construction deficit that we've seen in Hillview School, the issues that we've seen in Haygrove, but also I would say the issues with the lack of capital investment over a very long period of time. And obviously we dealt with a significant situation supporting a trust in Yeovil around some of the issues around concrete. There is a systemic issue around school build quality nationally as well as in Somerset. And that is something that we are not just working on the ground with trusts and schools to try and address, but also is costing the local authority money. And the costs of accommodating children who couldn't be accommodated at Hillview because of the 2-year delay runs into the many millions.
Okay, so I get the sense of we don't want to start from here. What happens if we don't make this decision? What's the impact on children?
The impact, yeah, Amelia can do this perfectly well, but there would be huge impact to the point where I think the £300,000 we're asking for financially probably would be dwarfed by if this did not work. I think because the alternatives are great. But Amelia, would you like to come in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Oak Partnership Trust is a small trust. The impact of taking on this school, these children whose level of need is so critical, it has the risk to has the possibility of seriously undermining that trust, which is really an unthinkable consequence. The trust needs to be strong. All our trusts need to be strong. Our schools need to be strong. And we've seen the consequences when that's not the case. So it's really important for these children who, as Ian described, have had significant life disruption, educational disruption already, that they have continuity of relationship, of education, of experience. That is the least that they deserve. And therefore enabling the trust to weather this financial challenge by using the existing policy that we have, but asking for the opportunity to vary our process feels pretty important, but also sort of strategically risky for children, families, the trust, the school, and the local authority because of the costs if they could not be accommodated in the school.
Thank you. I think I've got that we have to do this in so many ways, and some of the context that we have behind this. I've got a number of members and officers who want to contribute. I'll go to Nicola Hicks first.
Thank you, Bill. just wanted to emphasise the point you just made about the cost to the council of this decision not being taken. But I think point 33, there's a table at the top of the report there that shows actually the school not being fit for purpose to be able to take the intake that was previously required of the school when forecast has already had a significant cost to the council and will continue to have a significant cost unless we can work with the DFE and work with the trust to get the school into a position where it can actually increase the intake to be able to get the income into the school up, to be able to help towards their financial situation. So I think it, you know, some of that cost is already being seen there in the council having to look at alternative provision for those children. That's kind of, that cost is detailed in terms of what we're already seeing there, and that will, as we're not able to get that provision of children in there, that cost will remain and increase.
Okay, thank you. Claire, did I see you want to come back in?
Just wanted to say two things really. One is that yes, there has been an impact, and it is absolutely nothing to do with the Oak Partnership Trust in terms of the children who've not been able to go into that school because of the inability to the school to function because of the poor quality of the building design. But I would also want to provide some assurance, I think, for existing children and parents at that school that the problems with the build are being resolved. Let's be really clear, that building is now reasonably safe. Those children are safe to be in that school building. And the Department for Education have put in additional funding over and above what they've already committed, which was over and above the original costs. And they are confident in our weekly conversations with them and with the trust that by September this year, the building will be resolved in terms of being a completely suitable place for those children to be educated. That will support the trust to be able to educate those children and manage the care of those children better. They're currently functioning in a partial building because of the problems with the issues of the building. By September, they should be able to use the whole of the building, which will make it easier to be able to look after and educate those children in that environment. And we are preparing for about 20 more pupils to go in September, which will alleviate some of the financial pressure on the authority because those children will be in a state funded school rather than alternative provision at much higher cost. And we would plan, which we've talked with the trust about, a further 20 probably in February 2026. So that we're getting close to their maximum numbers, and again that will alleviate the pressure on the local authority budget, but also obviously increase the income for the trust itself in terms of supporting the viability of that trust going forward because they get funded by the needs of those individual children. We are very confident in the school trust. They are doing a very good job. We're working really closely, if you've heard from everybody, with the staff who are there. They are really amazing in their determination to do the right thing for those children, as you've heard from Ian Robinson. And we would want to invest in that school in terms of making sure those children have local provision, as Councillor Shearer has said, close to home, and the quality of provision that we know Oak Partnership Trust has provided in other schools. I think that's probably it. I mean, so I suppose my final point is just to be really clear that the money that you would be approving, if you did approve it, is not going to school repairs. It is not capital funding. It is revenue well, it's not revenue, it's dedicated schools grant high needs block, which basically supports the increased needs of those children who have increased need because they are being educated in an unsuitable environment and in volume, that those children have not been educated in a group of children for some time, and the impact of both poor building design and being in a group of children they've not been in together before has had an impact on their needs and has increased their needs. But we do need to be really clear, we are not funding capital here, we're funding high needs block to support the needs of those children.
Thank you. And I do think there are lessons that perhaps could be learned and shared with other areas of the country. Just one last question from me. There's nowhere else where this might bubble up that I can think of, but I don't want to have a queue of people asking for money that we don't know about. So have we just scoped out that this is effectively a unique situation?
So this is a unique situation on the basis this is a new building, a new school for children with very complex needs, with the additional complexity of the building design and the building construction being poor. So there is no other school in Somerset currently where this would have an impact. I think we have learnt a lot of lessons from this, both in terms of the local authority, the trust and the Department for Education. We do have a bid that's been accepted by the Department for Education that we made in 2023 for another special educational needs school for children of this type, which has been accepted and is due to be built in the Wells area with a completion date of 2027, although there's been absolutely no spades in the ground on that site at the moment. And currently the Department for Education, when I challenge them on this, probably on a fortnightly basis, are unable to give me any clarity about if this school will be built. Were that school to be built, we would be very clear that that this type of school needs to be overstaffed, and the Department for Education should fund the overstaffing for at least the first 12 to 18 months because of the complexity of need of those children and the need for the staffing to reflect that need. The children will settle over time and that staffing can reduce again, but we have learned from this that the overstaffing is absolutely critical. Obviously, if we have, this would also be a Department for Education build, not a local authority build, because it's going through the wave process. So we would need to be very confident with the Department of Education in terms of their snagging their construction, and that we were absolutely confident it was the right construction for the type of children who are going into that environment. What they currently have is a specification for special needs schools, for special educational needs schools, which does not reflect the different types of needs that children may have in different settings.
Okay, and yeah, I think the answer was no, there isn't anywhere else, but keep an eye on Wells.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Fred.
I'm going to caveat what I say by saying I feel a bit feisty at the moment because, and what I say is definitely not aimed in any shape or form towards our brilliant team here in our education department or at the Oak Partnership. But the more that I've found out about what's happened at Hillview, the more I've got a bit feisty or a bit annoyed, because I sit here and think, how are we in 2025? We're building schools for some of our most vulnerable children, and yet the education department at government, regardless of which party's running it, has got it so wrong. Because how can we build a school that allows water to go into the classrooms, that makes them not safe so that they're a flight risk, and that they are not being kept safe? And that is really frustrating to sit here and hear that. So I think from my view, there is no choice what we have to do today, but there is something around how we get this message out. And it's not about wanting to harm our relationships with DFE, because I've heard that they're going well, but I'd like DFE to understand how in Somerset it is not acceptable to allow this to happen, either at this school or at Haygrove, because this is the second school that I've heard about since becoming a unitary councillor. And we're not talking just about people's education and children's, and our most vulnerable children's education being messed up over months. We're talking about the impact that it has on their families and also the workers that work there. So I'm wondering if there's a letter from us, Bill, as leader of the council, to write to the DFE and say that, you know, they need to learn from this. Actually, that whilst we're putting money in from our funds, where we're already unfunded with that £100 million gap in, is it the DFGs, actually we want them to give that money to us, because the impact of us having to do that is because of the mistakes that they made when building this. And there's maybe something that I want to know, whether it's through the CCN network. We may not have an instance of this happening in Somerset, but it can't be the only case. And if it is the only case, then something's clearly, you know, the DFE need to again look at how they, you know, reimburse us. I just feel so frustrated that this has been allowed to happen. And whilst everyone is doing their best for those children, it's clearly had an impact.
Thank you, Fred. Can I just make members aware we're about 20 minutes behind schedule now, with another meeting this afternoon. So just if we can keep remarks now pithy, I can get as many people in as possible. So fully appreciate some people have significant concerns. So if we don't repeat points that other people have made, it'd be really helpful. Councillor Smith-Fran.
Thank you. This isn't an area I know very much about, so I just want a little bit of clarification. The money that we're taking from the high needs block, what would that have normally been spent on if we hadn't had this special case coming forward? Is there something that's going to be missing out of that budget in order to put this right? Thank you.
we pass that to Amelia, please? Yes, as the expert.
Amelia.
So I would love to say that we had a budget that we were keeping within, and that was an issue that we were wrestling with in the way that it's been described. Unfortunately, the reality of the high needs block is that we are legally required to fund children's need, regardless of whether we have the funding to do so. Now, it's right and appropriate that children should receive the funding that they need for their education, but it's also regrettable that the budget we have been provided comes nowhere close to covering the need that we are legally liable for. And so you can see in the report that the one of the key points that we're seeking executive agreement for is to the acceptance that the budget forecast is to grow, and that's a forecast overspend. So it is money that we don't have as a local authority that we are seeking authority to spend. It's currently, there is a statutory override, which means that it's currently disregarded for the purposes of the section 151, considering the financial position of the council. But that statutory override is currently due to expire at the end of March 26. So this is a significant risk for the council as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Amelia. Just looking to my right to Liz and Nicola.
Sorry, we're just having a debate. So I think the key here is that we've put in the paper there is a risk. With this funding going out, there's a risk that the DSG deficit will increase. So that's why we're being really transparent in bringing that towards members, so that members aren't seeing then monthly budget monitoring reports going through with that increase from the previous 99 million that you've seen. I think what's important to highlight at this point in time is that members will see coming forward a deficit management plan, which is just with officers for sign off at the moment, and that is about how we as a council are looking to address the deficit that we have for this year and for going forward, and things that we are going to look that we may need to put some investment into in order to deliver some savings to come out in the way that we address that deficit.
So I think that's all members of the executive that wanted to speak. I've got Councillor Lee Rebel and Councillor Diogo Rodriguez. Can I just remind you both about the time pressures we're under? And Lee, I wanted to ask whether, if you haven't already, can we get this onto the general point about new builds getting onto the children's scrutiny agenda? I think we need to get a deeper understanding of that, and any recommendations that could come forward would be really helpful. It would be great if the DFE would come in, wouldn't it? Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming out. First of all, apologies. Because of your overrun and calendars these days, I've been in another meeting, so I missed some part of the presentation. But I'll make my points very quickly. First of all, thank officers for the communication in relation to this. I was pleased that, as chair of scrutiny, to be able to the appropriate scrutiny to be part of the decision. A few very quick points, and then I'm conscious of your time. So I'll start off with the Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts' proposal in respect of a letter. I fully support. I support her comments as well. The fact that everything that we're talking about here has been outside of our control, yet it's massively impacting us, is a point we need to make and keep reiterating. I was lucky enough to visit the school myself, but I say lucky enough, but it was in the week after the flood. So I saw some of the issues and problems in relation to that. But the points I want to make are supportive as much as I can. The school has the potential to be an amazing place for young people, and the sooner we can get it to that point, the better. I think it's important, and we need to maintain the pressure on the government to allow us to drive that forward. I wanted to just support the risk to the DSG. I know the point's been made, but the reason I'm bringing it up here is because obviously we've been waiting for the DMP, the Deficit Management Plan, for a while, And that's the thing that we keep tying lots of our hopes and expectation on. The fact that we're going to be potentially have a DSG that's over £100 million because of the consequence of this decision is something that we cannot stop banging the drum about and making sure that we because we need to make sure that the statutory override is dealt with in a sensible way, separate to this decision. As I say, I fully support the concerns. I hope that we can go forward and learn from this. As far as coming to scrutiny, there are two bits that need to come to scrutiny. There is potential buildings for the future that come to it, or buildings that are being built by other people that Somerset then have to take over. We need to have some oversight in that, so bring that to scrutiny. Happy to take that, but also, Chair, I would encourage you to encourage the DMP to come to scrutiny at the earliest opportunity as well. Otherwise, I don't like the fact we're having to make this decision, but as Chair of the Children and Family Scrutiny, I support the decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your support on that, and I've made a note of the suggestion to write already. My understanding is the current plan is DMP to come to scrutiny in July and then to executive in August. We'll keep you informed if there is any change to that.
Just a very quick point, Chair, forgive me. The reason I was waiting, I was speaking to my scrutiny officers, and currently the plan for July, DMP is not on it.
Okay, can we? Yeah. So, okay, we'll see if we can address that and get it before your scrutiny committee in July, if that's possible. Okay. Thank you, Diogo.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Frances Nicholson would have liked to be here, but she's held up with an Ofsted inspection, but she did want me to say a few words on her behalf. So this is what she wants me to read out. I want to recognise that the council has been put into an extremely difficult position by the egregious behaviour of the Department for Education. Over the last 10 years, the council invested millions in places to meet the needs of children with SEND in well-designed, well-specified, well-constructed and suitable buildings. The council was successful in a bid to the DfE for a new school. The DfE insisted on their design, their specification, their contractor, their quality insurance. They knew best. In every single one of these, they failed. I'm relieved to see that they are prepared to put some money into rectifying their mistakes, but of course not enough. But there was worse to come. They knew best about opening a new SEMH special school, and the Academy Trust, of course, answers to the DfE and was in their hands. Experience elsewhere has made it quite clear that pupils need to be transitioned slowly and in very small numbers into a new SEMH school, particularly if they've been out of school for some time. This is not about the children and their needs becoming greater because they are in a new school. It was entirely predictable that the children's behaviour would escalate in the face of suddenly coming to school, and in such numbers, exacerbated as it was by all the inadequacies of the building. This is purely about how to go about opening a school that will be able to meet these children's needs. I have every sympathy with the Academy, which was faced with an impossible task. Funding for overstaffing instantly became absolutely necessary. The council did absolutely the right thing to make sure these Somerset children were kept safe and a school could be supported to provide a good education. What is utterly outrageous is that the council is expected to carry the can for the Department for Education. I should note here that heightened behaviour is not only a feature of new schools. Experience elsewhere also shows that a similar situation exists with the transition into an existing successful school for any pupil with SEMH who has been out of school for some time. I understand that Director of Children's Services has done her absolute best in the face of DfE intransigence. If the department will not provide the funding, then I appreciate that the council must do so. What I am worried about is the mechanism that is proposed. To upend the banding system, effectively to say that officers didn't understand that young people's behaviour was almost certain to be heightened in the circumstances they would be going into, is, I believe, casting very unfair aspersions on our staff. It raises a huge risk of undermining any confidence in the banding system, and I imagine schools across the county will be taking careful note and considering challenges to the system. It also puts the emphasis on the children. This is not appropriate. I would urge the executive to find a mechanism to do what it needs to do in a way that is quite clear that it is clearing up a mess not of its own making, not of the children's making, not of the Academy Trust's making, but solely and only the making of the DofE. Please can the executive find a way of doing so? Thank you.
Thank you for passing on those comments from Francis Diogo. I think largely supported, but there's that point on banding that I just want to get a response to, please. And Amelia has indicated.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to emphasize that we have used the existing banding framework. It is published and available to the public. We use that for all funding decisions. And the reason that we have had to use the banding system, even though it is focused on individual children, and I think we would all accept Councillor Francis Nicholson's point about the fact that this is not a child-driven situation. The reason we are using that is because that's the mechanism that is open to us. And so we're using our existing policy. The way that we usually deploy that policy is forward-looking, and we will attach a banding looking at children's anticipated needs. We are in this instance asking for a process to look backwards at what actually happened over the year, but using the published banding framework. So I don't accept the suggestion that we are in any way upending that framework. We have used what is available to us to enable us to bring this decision forward.
Yeah, thank you. That concurs with my point of view. I don't recognise that description of upending the system, though I do appreciate all the comments that Councillor Nicholson has relayed around the failures within the system. So moving on to the recommendation, we've got the 3 recommendations that are set out to agree to vary the banding assessment process as a result of the specific issues set out in paragraphs 4 to 8 of the report regarding Hillview School for the 24-25 academic year, only to allow a backdated allocation of funding, agree to fund 0.353 million of additional expenditure from the high needs block of the DSG to Oak Partnership Trust in relation to the needs of the children at Hillview School for the 24-25 academic year only, and using the council's published banding criteria, and note there is a significant risk the forecast cumulative DSG deficit will increase from 99.125 million to 100.558 million by the 31st of March 26, due to the allocation of funds as summarised in paragraphs 33 and 34 of the financial implications section of the report. I'd like to propose an additional paragraph 4 to write to the Secretary of State for Education to express serious concerns about design failures in new build schools and the impact on Somerset children. Is everybody happy with that amendment, for that amendment to be accepted in? Yeah, I think we're all happy to add that one in. So can I see a proposer, please? Councillor Shearer, seconded by Councillor Lashon. Those in favour with the motion as amended, those against, that's clearly carried. Okay, we're going to resume to item 8, which is the Housing Infrastructure Fund Projects Report. This would be Councillor Rigby to introduce, who's not with us. So we'll just go straight to my notes say Chris Hall, and I can. Thank you. I can see Jenny and Alison sat at the table in front of me, and neither of them look like Chris Hall. And then Chris Hall appears. That's what Chris Hall looks like. Chris, do you want to say anything first?
No need for an introduction. We'll go straight to the officers, if that's okay, please.
That's great. Thank you very much. And Jenny.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Jenny Clifford, Taunton Garden Town Implementation Manager. So the Housing Infrastructure Fund, it was always intended to unlock the delivery of housing by funding infrastructure, with the emphasis very much on unlocking sites that would otherwise not come forward. This is a legacy grant agreement that was signed in 2019 by Somerset West and Taunton Council. There have been several changes in circumstances in the period between the initial discussions on this grant agreement and obviously the most recent position that we found ourselves in. So As originally envisaged, it was going to be a conventional grant that subsequently turned into a loan arrangement to be loaned to the developer at a market interest rate. When initially put together the Housing Infrastructure Fund for the Staple Grove allocation, we were dealing with land promoters. Developers have now taken on the site and have now been progressing their proposals to and through the planning system. And the package of infrastructure that HIF was intended to provide, thereby unlocking the housing, also shifted through the evolution of the Housing Infrastructure Fund, being very much tailored to the funding availability period. So we moved from the construction of a spine road and contribution towards the construction of the school, more towards the intention to fund a junction, the undergrounding of overhead power lines, and also the acquisition of land rights over land which is intended to form the primary school. The current position that we find ourselves in is that the developers now advise that they are able to progress the housing schemes on the site without need for the Housing Infrastructure Fund. And because the funding has to be essential to unlock the delivery of housing on that site, Homes England has now indicated that the funding is unfortunately no longer available and has formally requested us to withdraw this particular scheme from the HIF programme. Briefly, I'd like to just point out the part in the report on financial matters and risk implications. So we're on page 52, starting on paragraph 13. The main financial implication of this on the council is the fact that if we had been able to loan the money to the developers, it would have been recovered back to us, and we would have had the ability to recycle that funding into other infrastructure projects, thereby unlocking further housing delivery. And unfortunately, we no longer have that ability. No particular projects or infrastructure had been identified to receive those recycled funds. That would have been the next stage to identify those had we successfully drawn down the funding. In terms of other implications, very minor is what I would say, in that we were funded through a separate fund to give some extra project management capacity. So that has been at no cost to us. In terms of the financial exposure of the council through existing drawdowns, that has been minimal, less than £3,000 in total. But also clearly there has been considerable officer time associated with work on the Housing Infrastructure Fund so far, with a range of work across different services, particularly planning and also legal. Homes England's invited us to submit a claim to recover some of those costs. We are putting that claim together and we will obviously seek to recover as much as we can. So therefore, the main financial implication is obviously the loss of the ability to recycle those funds, but our exposure as a result of the loss of this HIF funding is very limited. The recommendation, therefore, before you, as requested by Homes England, is that we unfortunately withdraw the Staple Grove scheme from the Housing Infrastructure Fund programme. Thank you.
Okay, anything to add, Alison?
The only thing I would like to add is that this is a situation which is occurring elsewhere across the country. We are not alone in this position, largely because, as Jenny's described, it changed from being a grant to a loan system, and the loan is not very favourable. They can achieve any loan of any monies they need from the bank at the same commercial rate as we're allowed to provide, but without the conditions that Homes England stipulate. So it's an unfortunate position, but we're not alone in it.
Okay, any comments or questions on this? I know we've kind of gone through, some of us have seen this come through the process out of the public domain already. I'm not seeing anybody in. Oh, Fran.
Thank you. Just a quick question. You're going to put in a claim for some of the costs of what officers have undertaken in order to deal with this. Will that include all the work that was done by Somerset West and Taunton leading up to this, or can it only be since we've been a unitary council?
I think we're going to try and claim as much as we can. I'm pulling together timesheets at the moment, so I'm not unfortunately able to give you a total amount. I certainly have information from colleagues in legal in terms of the amount of very intensive time that they have spent drafting lots of documentation. We will recover as much as we can.
Thank you for that reassurance. And Heather, quickly.
I just want to take 2 seconds to say thank you so much for all of the time. I know we've gone through many briefings for this, and I'm sure if Mike had been here, he'd want to say this. The efforts you've put into helping us as members understand what's gone on over a period of time, and I just want to say thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that's been done in the background, which would dwarf that massively. So thank you.
I just want to say that it's very much the goalposts moving on the actual HIF fund that has made it so unfavourable, and it's disappointing that the work that you've put in is come to this.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from any other members? Okay, Lucy, briefly, please.
Sorry, so I was a little bit confused about, I think you may have answered most of my question, but the implication about the withdrawal of the funds. So the housing infrastructure funding, that comes attached to a particular development and only can be used for that development. And was that not the case previously? So is that something that's changed? Because obviously, I mean, I can't understand why the companies would say, actually, we don't need that. Is that because it was a loan and not a grant, and they're avoiding having a loan?
I think you've answered the question in your question. So as far as I'm aware, the answer is yes. Okay, that's great. Diego?
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, the downfall is that we won't get 14 million in the future to invest in housing, but that is what it is. Just one point of clarification, which I'm getting just a bit confused about, but perhaps it's a different fund, I don't know. But in previous papers on reporting in the capital projects, there's normally been a line around Staple Growth Housing Infrastructure Fund, and I think one I'm looking in front here is about Q2, which says there was a spend deadline of March 25. And it's anticipated that at least 9 million of this can be achieved, is what it said. I'm just wondering, is that the same 14 million, or is that a different pot of money? Because we were talking about spending 9 million, but now maybe not. So just clarity.
So that's taken from this 14.2 million. It's the same funding. It was the profiling that was needed for budget purposes in terms of when it was at an earlier stage anticipated that we would be in a position to start drawing down and then subsequently recovering. Unfortunately, things when that drawdown was not achieved within that timescale. And as I've already explained, unfortunately now we find ourselves as no longer having that 14.2 million available to us.
Just a very quick follow-up then, Chair. So this has nothing to do with not with going past the spend deadline of March 2025. That has no impact, or no reason for the decision we're making today, or you're making today, sorry.
The reason for the recommendation today is wider than the funding availability period. We had been in discussion with Homes England to extend the funding availability period even further, which would have allowed drawdowns, but that has been overtaken by events, by the fact that the developers have now advised that they do not fundamentally need the money to unlock the development. That means the whole purpose of the fund being made available to us is no longer there, and Homes England has therefore indicated the funding is not available, and that is now irrespective of any original funding deadline that they set.
Okay, thank you. So if we come back to the recommendation, please, sorry, this is going forwards and backwards of the agenda, that the executive resolves to withdraw the Staple Grove project from the Housing Infrastructure Fund programme. That's proposed by Councillor Shearer, seconded by Councillor Wilkins. Those in favour, please. Those against, that's clearly carried. and which moves us on to, sorry, Jenny, Alison, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. It's not been a straightforward one to work on that project. Which moves us on to our last item, which is the award of contract for Somerset-wide integrated sexual health services. And I'm hoping that Councillor Graham Oakes will pop up on the screen to introduce. And just to advise colleagues that if anyone does wish to raise anything in confidential Appendix A, we will need to move a resolution to go into private session and exclude the masses of press and public that must be around the corner because I can't see any. Graham, would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, I'm sure there's a large queue forming outside as people get in to listen to the Swish item. Public health is provided by Somerset Council, the NHS and other organisations, but Somerset Council is responsible for providing specialist sexual health services, including sexually transmitted infection care, contraception and prevention services for its population. This helps to prevent unplanned pregnancies, protect the public's health and reduce health inequalities. This is a good use of public funds. Somerset Council modernised sexual health services for Somerset, and our integrated sexual health service, SWISH, has been operating since 2016, providing effective services whilst managing changing demand and population need. This is a necessary service and I hope the executive will support it. Alison and Mitch will now take you through the report.
Thank you very much.
There you are. Hello, Alison.
Morning, afternoon, actually. Thank you very much, Councillor Oakes, for your support with this work. As DPH, I'm delighted to introduce Michelle Hawkes, who's known as Mitch, who's our public health specialist for sexual health. And she's going to take us through the detail of this award briefly. We're conscious of lunch. This is a really important service for our population, and we'd like to thank the executive for their support.
Right, thank you very much. Good afternoon. And thanks, Councillor Oakes, for that introduction there. So we're asking today for the approval for the award of contract for the Swish service starting from April next year. And that's as part of a new provider selection regime, regulations around procuring NHS services. This is quite the first time we've used it for this particular contract, using a direct award, which has enabled us the flexibility to award a contract to a sort of specialist clinical service with a very limited market, which is really important in terms of our continuity and sustainability of these types of services. So that process has been done. We are working on a shorter term contract period purely because sexual health is quite a fragmented landscape. So we commission some services, NHS commission other services, whether that's the ICB or NHS England. And this fragmentation can often lead to kind of breakdown in pathways for service users, patients, poor access to services such as contraception, just as an example. So this time will give us more time to kind of work with that system, particularly the ICB, around what a future model sexual health service provision might look like for our population, and how we might be able to work more collaboratively around that. So our plan is to use the next few years to do that, and to obviously have some public engagement around people's experiences and what they would like to, see in a sexual health service. I think that's probably, I'll pause there. Yep.
Was there any questions on this? I'm not seeing anything from lead members at all, so I'll go to Diogo. What I can see is
Thanks, Chair.
to ask something.
I am, yeah. No, it's just a view that I'd quite like. Recent reporting. I mean, I welcome the document. It's great. Thank you. Recent reporting suggests that there's a rise in gonorrhea cases this year. Syphilis diagnoses have risen in 24 compared to 23. And chlamydia diagnoses have dropped 13% from one year to another as well. there's clearly, lots of issues that local authorities are grappling with in terms of significant demand. And one of the things I hear lots of local authorities saying is that there isn't enough spending power being given by central government to kind of tackle and prevent as well. And I'm just wondering, particularly with the spending review coming up, if it's something that this council feels, I mean, I'm sure we'd want money for all sorts of things, but particularly on this, on sexual health, to combat the rise of syphilis cases or gonorrhea, etc., whether it's something that we're lobbying for, or have been lobbying for as well, please.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Rodriguez, for the question. I think what I would say, my mind's just gone completely blank. Oh, spending review. Yes. So,
yeah, absolutely. Anything we can do to kind of support that agenda would be very welcome, obviously. And we do lobby. We have a sort of regional commissioners network and an English commissioners network, which I'm tied into, and obviously LGA and the support we get from that. We're constantly kind of raising this. It is obviously it's a complex landscape. So actually, in Somerset, we know from that recent report, gonorrhea and syphilis have gone down this year, and the Southwest is relatively okay in terms of our chlamydia. We need to do more to identify women to come forward for testing and blah, blah, blah. And also there's other initiatives that have been put in play, which are really positive ones. So PrEP is one, which is the pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV, which is a bit of a game changer in terms of prevention of HIV. But that means more people coming into the service, more people being identified with STIs that might not have accessed services before. So that's a good thing because they're coming in, they're getting treatment, and we know particularly around gonorrhea, there's concerns around sort of antibiotic resistance around that. So those are good things, but obviously also drive up demand. So yeah, I'll probably go into too much detail.
And my brain's now back in working order. It was hyperglycemia that was affecting it. So I think what we raised with the Regional Director of Public Health yesterday is that our public health grant in real terms is reducing in value year on year. And actually that is a real challenge. Somerset as a council receives very low per capita funding through the public health grant. That's something Councillor Evans and Councillor Oakes has lobbied central government and our Director of Public regionally for. And I think what that means is when we're providing these prescribed services, such as sexual health, they disproportionately take a bigger chunk of our grant. So we've got less money available to do the preventative work. That we still do some, but actually you can't cut a clinical service. It costs a certain amount to run. So I think it's a concern to all of us that actually we preserve the public health grant and we lobby for more to enable us to engage more in preventative activities.
Thank you very much. I can see Graham's appeared back on screen. I wonder whether you wanted to add, Graham.
No, I didn't have a hyperglycemic moment, though I'm tempted. Alison just said what I was going to say, so I'm glad that she jumped back in.
Excellent. I think that's covered. Not seeing any other questions. So we've got recommendations before us to agree to delegate authority to the DPH to award the Somerset contract for integrated sexual health service to Somerset NHS Foundation Trust through the provider selection regime direct award process C. The new contract is for the 2-year period, 1st of April 26 to the 31st of March 28, with the option to extend for a further year. Approves the value of the 2-year contract at £4,434,382, that's precise, extending to £6,651,573. If the 3rd year is granted, it does not include any NHS pay award uplifts, which will be funded dependent on the continuing to be received in the public health grant. Agrees that Appendix A, the PSR Progress CSC evaluation report shall be treated in confidence on the ground that it contains exempt information relating to financial or business affairs of the council, and the public interest in maintaining exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Okay, and we didn't need to exclude press or public. So can I see a proposer? Councillor Shearer. Can I see a seconder? Councillor Lyshon. Those in favour? Those against? Okay, so just to say thank you very much to Alison, Michelle and the team for bringing this forwards, and all the work that's gone behind this, and we look forward to further updates. Okay, I think that's the end of our agenda. Is that correct? So all that it remains for me to do is close the meeting formally and wish Councillor Wilkins a very happy birthday. And if you line up there, if you've got hyperglycemia, he has cakes. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.